So I heard you're wanting to be a reader, you're wanting to get into reading. Well, that used to be me. And I used to hate reading. I used to despise reading. I would not pick up a book for anything. I would not read the books that I was supposed to read in high school. I would just simply not pick up a book. And I went from that to reading 60 books in my first full year of reading. And I'm gonna tell you how you can go from absolutely hating reading to absolutely loving it. We're going to flip the complete opposite sides of the spectrum. In this video, I'm gonna give you tips and I'm going to give you recommendations for the best books I think to help you get into reading. So with that being said, let's get right on into it. Let's hop right into my personal tips on how to get into reading, how to start, where to start, things you should avoid or things you should be doing to really help you get into the habit and into the routine of reading every single day. First tip, and this is probably one of the biggest tips that I'm going to tell you, is pick books that align with your current interests. And what I mean by that is if you are not someone now who likes romance movies, if you don't like rom-coms, if that's not your thing, probably don't pick up a romance book because that's not gonna be your vibe. That's not gonna be something you're gonna enjoy. Me personally, I started with the first book in the Harry Potter series. I was already someone who absolutely loved the Harry Potter movies. I love that universe and the characters and everything. So reading the book was so easy because I was already so enthralled, invested, and so in love because I'm already in love with the universe. So if there already is some kind of universe world that you love in a TV show or in a movie that also came from books, pick up the book. That is a great place to start. But if there's nothing particular like that, if you are someone who loves rom-coms, pick up a romance. If you're someone who loves fantasy shows or series, pick up a fantasy. Pick something that is really going to align with your current interests because it's going to make it so much more fun and so much easier to get into a book and to really enjoy it and read it all the way through. The next tip is going to be equally as important for your success when it comes to creating this habit and this routine and this love of reading, which is setting a small and attainable goal to begin with. You don't want to have this goal of, oh, I want to read one book in 1 week or in 3 days. You want to make it super attainable to where you can easily do it every single day to really build up that habit and start to really fall in love with it. So for me personally, I don't like stopping reading in the middle of a chapter. So I would personally, when I started, set a goal of I want to read 1, 2, 3 chapters, whatever it is, every single day. If you want to read more than the one chapter, great, read more than the one chapter. But if you read the one chapter that your goal was for the day and then you're kind of just done with it, you put it down and you pick it up the next day. You can set a number of pages. If you're not someone who really cares about stopping in the middle of a chapter, you can pick a certain amount of time, whether you want to read for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour every single day. Doing that, setting that small little goal for yourself every single day is something that will literally make it so much easier to create a habit out of this. One chapter can be anywhere from 2 pages to maybe 20 pages depending on the book. You can easily do that in one day right before bed, right when you wake up in the morning. I mean, you can even literally read that while you're using the bathroom. Like, let's just be so for real right now. You could do that at any point in the day when you have that time, and it will help to just create that habit and make you get into the routine of doing it every single day, which is gonna be a huge thing when it comes to starting to read because it can be kind of daunting to like want to finish a book but have this whole book to read, and maybe you're not someone who's ever really loved reading. It can be kind of daunting, so doing that can just literally help so much, I promise. My third tip is going to be something that maybe is a little, I don't know if controversial is the right word, but it's something that I feel is going to be so important going into reading, and that is it is okay, let me repeat that, it is okay to DNF a book. If you don't know what that means, it means did not finish, do not finish, whatever. It is okay to do that. It is okay to put down a book and be like, I'm not gonna finish this. You can soft DNF, which is basically where like maybe you feel like you could like this book but you're just not enjoying it at this point in time. Soft DNF it, you can pick it up later. A hard DNF would be, I'm not enjoying this book, I don't think I ever will, I'm going to put this book down and I'm not gonna finish reading it. And again, that is okay. I think something a lot of us do, especially when we start reading, is getting stuck into the mindset of we have to finish every book we start because we want to feel like we accomplished it. But at the end of the day, reading is for enjoyment. Reading is for fun. If you are gonna start this hobby and this, you know, daily routine, habit, whatever you want to call it, of reading, it is for fun, okay? And if you're not enjoying a book, that's okay to stop it and pick up something else. And I think that that is something that could help so many people get get into reading that maybe want to get into reading if they start a book and they're not liking the book, but they feel like they have to finish it, so they end up just not finishing the book, but they don't start another book because they feel like they have to finish the one they already started. Just know it's okay to not finish it. It's okay to put it down, want to come back to it later, or just put it down and not want to pick it up ever again at all. It's okay, and I would highly encourage you to do that because again, reading is for fun, and if you are someone that doesn't want to waste the time on a book you're not enjoying, don't do it, okay? Because at the end of the day, your life is not going to be much different whether you went and finished it or you didn't. You probably just would have ended up spending those hours that took you to finish the book you didn't like and could have spent those hours reading a book that you actually really loved. So just know it's okay to DNF, and sometimes it is 100% worth it to DNF a book. The next tip I have is actually audiobooks. I feel like this is something that can be very beneficial, especially when you're starting out, but even not when you're starting out. Audiobooks are a great thing. I don't know how many times I just said great, but seriously, they are an amazing thing. You can literally put it on, pop your headphones in, listen to it while you're doing laundry, doing dishes, cooking dinner, coloring, while you're journaling, while you're crocheting, while you're doing a puzzle, while you're on a run, while you're lifting weights. You can listen to it whenever you want, and you'll still be getting reading done while you're also accomplishing other tasks, which let me tell you, I feel like it's such a serotonin boost to be listening to a book and know that you're getting some reading done, but also you're getting productive in other ways. Last night I was listening to an audiobook while I did the dishes and made dinner, so I would highly recommend listening to audiobooks. For audiobooks, you can get Audible, which basically you pay a certain amount every month and you get a certain amount of credits. Typically for the lowest one, you get 1 credit a month, which is 1 book of your choice. There's also a ton of books on Audible that you can download for free, which is great. You can also listen to a certain amount of hours of audiobooks on Spotify if you have Spotify Premium. So if you already have Spotify Premium, that's another way. I've also heard you can get audiobooks off Libby, which is basically an online library, which is something you can use on your phone. You can use it on your Kindle if you have one, your iPad, really any device. You can download Libby. If you have a library card, you just sign up, and I've heard you can get tons of audiobooks and regular books on there as well. So that can be something that is so helpful to get you into the habit of reading because you're able to do more than one thing at a time while you're reading, which is amazing. Next tip might sound a little silly, but it is to go to a bookstore. Now, you do not have to go to a bookstore and buy a book or buy tons of books, but just simply going to a bookstore, walking around, just doing a little browsing. Maybe if you go to one like a Barnes, or maybe there's a local bookstore that has a cafe attached, and you go and you get a coffee or a matcha, whatever your kind of drink is, maybe a little pastry item, and you sit down and you have your coffee and you sit in the bookstore and you just read. And I'm telling you, being in that environment surrounded by people who love reading and just being in the environment surrounded by all these books, it is such a good environment for reading. It's such a vibe. It's so cozy, and I swear it just feels so good, and that is something I love to do. It's something I wish I did more than I do. You can even make it a fun little thing where maybe you go with your boyfriend or girlfriend, or maybe you go with some friends. It is so fun. Like seriously, it is so fun. It's such a good time, and I swear I feel like it can just really help you to really spark that love and that interest of reading a little bit more. And the last tip, which kind of seems like a surprising one, but it is music, listening to music while reading. I know some people don't like listening to music while they read, or some people just cannot focus if they have music in the background. But if you're someone who knows that you like having background noise, or maybe you're someone who wants to try it, you can literally go on Spotify, search almost any book and find a playlist that somebody has made for that book, or you can even search like fantasy book playlist, romance book playlist, whatever it is, and find a playlist to listen to while reading that genre, or again, that specific book, because there's tons of playlists for specific books. And a lot of books actually have playlists in the front or back, specifically romance books, that the author has put together this list of songs that they think fit the book perfectly. My sister personally can't listen to music with words, so she goes to YouTube and searches up like lo-fi fantasy music or whatever to listen to in the background of her reading, and she says that it just makes the vibe so much better, and she absolutely loves it. And I wholeheartedly believe that could make all the difference in someone's reading experience, is just having that music, setting the tone, setting the vibe, setting the scene, and it can literally just make you so much more enthralled and invested into the book, because especially if you're reading a fantasy, you're into a new fantasy world, having some fantasy-esque music playing in the background, I swear, can literally just trick your mind, set the scene, and completely change your perspective of what you're reading, and just literally make it feel like you are inside the book. And that is exactly what we want to happen when we are reading. So I would highly recommend trying that if you haven't already, because I swear, it makes all the difference. Now, before we get into the book recommendations I have for you to help you get into reading, I just want to say this is a little reminder that I think is so important when starting to read. This is not schoolwork. This is not an assignment that needs to be turned in. This isn't for your job. This is for fun. This is for pure and utter enjoyment. This is something that is an escape that helps you to get out of reality and just experience somebody else's life and experience somebody else's experiences. And that is a huge reason why most of us readers read, is because it is just that. It is an escape. It is something that can just completely transport you in your mind to a completely different world, whether you're just in a fun little rom-com or you're completely enthralled and invested in a crazy battle in a fantasy book. It doesn't matter what the circumstances is, what you like reading about, whether you're up in space or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's for enjoyment. And another thing that is so amazing about reading is that everyone's reading experience is different, and your reading experience is completely customizable to what you want your personal reading experience to be. You want to underline, highlight, tab your books and fully annotate them and go crazy? Do it. You don't want to do any of that? Don't do it. You want to listen to music while you read? Do it. You don't? Then you don't have to. You want to read a sci-fi book? Do it. If you don't, don't. Your reading experience is completely and utterly your own. You could hate a book I love and I could hate a book you love, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is our personal reading experiences, and reading is seriously one of the most wonderful things I think that has ever been blessed upon us as human beings and as people who are able to read. So I just want to say that this is completely your own thing. Make it what you want, do what you want, read what you want, have fun, because at the end of the day, reading is for fun, and reading is all about you and what you want out of it. Okay, now moving on, we are going to get into some book recommendations that I think would be perfect to help you get into reading, depending on what genre you are looking for. So first, we're going to start out with some romance book recommendations. So first, if you're looking for some romance book recommendations that have no smut, no spice, whatever you want to refer to it as, the first book I would recommend is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is a young adult fiction romance book, and this is such a sweet story. This has some fake dating in it, some enemies to lovers. It's also such a quick read since it's a YA book. It goes really fast, and it's just such a good book. This book is very hyped up for a reason. It is 100% worth the hype. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't think you would enjoy a YA book, then I would probably steer clear of this, because they are obviously in high school, so it's a little bit more immature, but it is so good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it as a 21-year-old girl. Keeping with young adult books, we have The Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy by Jenny Han. Now, a lot of you probably know this is a show on Amazon Prime Video, and if you've seen the show and you like it, then 10 out of 10 recommend reading the books. But even if you haven't seen the show, I would highly recommend these. They are, again, super quick, easy reads. I think they're like under 300 pages, just really fun. The summary vibes of this is so perfect. This also has a bit of a love triangle going on, so if that's kind of your vibe and you like that kind of thing, I would highly recommend these. And if you're someone who wants to kind of get into a series for a little bit of time, this would be great. It gives you 3 book options that, again, are all very fast-paced and easy reads. And the last no smut book recommendation I have is another YA book, and that is The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. This, again, such a fun summery read. The summer vibes within this book are absolutely perfect. The plot in this in general was such a fun story and such a fun read. Again, super fast-paced. It's just a really fun, quick, easy read. It's not going to be anything that takes too much brain power, but it is so enjoyable and a really sweet little love story. Now, moving into more adult romances that do have some smut, some have more than others. The first we have is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Out of all of these adult romances, this is probably going to be the one with the least amount of smut, but this is one of my favorites from the list. The couple in this book, Olive and Adam, are one of my all-time favorite book couples in a romance book ever. I loved the plotline of this. This is a fake dating trope, which is my personal favorite trope to read, watch, whatever. I love the fake dating. The plotline was so fun, and the banter and the tension between them, and just the way that the love story progressed was just so sweet, and they felt like absolute soulmates, and it was just so good, and I would highly recommend. This is another book that is pretty hyped up, and I do believe it is hyped up for a reason, and it is worth the hype. Next, we have my personal 2 first romance books I ever read, which is The Worst Best Man and The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. These are still some of my favorite romance books I've ever read. I love the plot lines of these, the couples in these. They're both such fun reads. The Worst Best Man follows Max and Lena. Lena used to be engaged to Max's brother, and he stands her up at the altar, and now years later they have to work on a project together. And then The Wedding Crasher is exactly what it sounds like. Sloane ends up essentially crashing Dean's wedding, and then they enter a bit of a fake dating arrangement. I loved our 2 main characters in this. I loved Dean. The ending of of this book is a ending of a book that I still think of very, very frequently, even though I read this in 2022. I would highly recommend both of them, but this one definitely is my favorite of the two. This one is the first one. This is the second one. You don't have to read them in order if you don't want to, because they're about different people, but if you want to read them in order, read this one first and then this one. Then we have The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. I absolutely loved this book. Again, we have some fake dating in this book. We also kind of have like strangers to friends to lovers. It is such a sweet story. This had me hooked literally from the start. It's such an easy, fast-paced read. It was so, so good. Highly recommend. This is technically the second to Mr. Wrong Number, but I did prefer this one over Mr. Wrong Number. Now you can definitely read Mr. Wrong Number. I thought it was still a fun, good book, but you don't have to read that one if you do not want to, and I would highly recommend this one in particular. Next, we have a whole series, which is the Eden series by Devoney Perry. This is literally my favorite series of all time. I absolutely love it. They're all on Kindle Unlimited, so I actually currently do not own the physical copies. They are all romance books, but they do all have some kind of mystery, kind of crime aspect to it, I guess you could say, which just adds to the plot of the story and makes it so much more fun and so much more enjoyable. Again, highly recommend. I could go on and on and on and on and on and on about this series, but I'm not going to. Just know it's so good and I highly, highly recommend. Next, we have The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which is also the first in the Off-Campus series. Now, I haven't read the rest in the Off-Campus series yet, but I really, really enjoyed this book. I loved the plot of this book, but also, of course, since it is a romance, I loved the romance in this book. Our main male character, Garrett, is absolutely just so selfless when it comes to Hannah, and the things that he does in this book for her and for her mental health and just stuff like that is so, so amazing, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading this. This is a hockey romance, so if you're someone who already likes watching hockey, or maybe you enjoy watching movies like rom-coms that have to do with sports, I would definitely recommend this one. And next, we have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, however you want to say her last name, because I actually don't know how it's actually pronounced. But anyways, this book is so, so good. This has some magical realism aspect to it, where basically there's this apartment that she lives in, and sometimes when she walks through that door, she is 7 years in the past, but the second she walks out of the door, she is back in her current time, and she meets this man in her apartment 7 years in the past. It is so, so good. I literally just got chills thinking about this book. This is a 6-star read for me. It is so unbelievably good. It is hyped up again, but for a reason, and I would highly recommend. It is something that I think is so easy to just get fully invested and enthralled in. I was sobbing at so many parts of this book, but they were like happy tears, some sad tears. This book brought out every single emotion and more, and it was so worth it, and I highly, highly, highly recommend. Next is another series, and that is the Moo You series. Now, this series is by a bunch of different authors, and I think there's like 10 or 12 books in this series. It is quite a long series. I do not have physical copies of these. They are all on Kindle Unlimited, and that is how I read 2 of them. I have only read Holdout and Playmaker. They all follow different people. They are all just based at the same college with the same hockey team, and the 2 that I read anyways were under 300 pages, so they are super quick, easy reads, and they're just so fun. They're not maybe something that you're gonna get super invested in the characters and just like have all these feelings, but I think this would be a great series to start with because how short they are, how quick they are, they're really easy, they're not hard to understand, and also, again, if you're someone that likes sports, watching movies about sports, whatever, these are gonna be the ones for you. And let me just say, there is some kind of crack in hockey romances, okay? I had heard before reading any hockey romances that hockey romances were good. Let me just tell you, they are in fact so good that I actually don't know what kind of crack the writers put in these hockey romances, but there's something because they are just that good, okay? Okay. Next, we have another series that is such a beloved series by me and so many others, and that is the Twisted series by Anna Hong. So the first one is Twisted Love, Twisted Games, Twisted Hate, and Twisted Lies. Now, these again all follow different characters. The first book is a brother's best friend trope. The second one is a bodyguard trope, and she is a princess. The third one is enemies to lovers and also best friend's brother. And then the last one is a little bit of a fake dating trope. And we also kind of have our main female girl kind of being like stalked. So there's like that aspect to it. If that's not your thing, I mean, I don't know. But I really, really enjoyed this whole series. It's so, so good. And I would just highly, highly recommend. Now, if you are someone who does want a bit of a dark romance, I would highly recommend Hooked by Emily McIntyre. Now, this is the only actual dark romance I have personally ever read. And I actually just finished this about 2 days ago and enjoyed it so much more than I thought I would. This is kind of like a fairy tale retelling. This one kind of bases around Hook, Peter, and Wendy. And this is the first in the Never After series. So you have a whole series of dark romances that kind of have fairy tale aspects. One is like Lion King. I know one is Hunchback of Notre Dame. So if you end up reading this one, really liking it, there is more to read. And if you are someone who kind of likes a bit of a more dark romance type of vibe, I feel like this would be a really good one for you. It's not too long. It's literally like just under 300 pages. And I felt like this was pretty fast paced and really really just kind of got into the story and I had a good time with it, so highly recommend. And the last two romance book recommendations I have is Archer's Voice and Travis by Mia Sheridan. This is technically a series. The first one is Archer's Voice, and this book is just so sweet. It's a very emotional book. I would definitely say don't read this unless you're wanting a book that's a bit sad. And when you read this book, you're gonna hate Travis, and that brings us to Travis, which is his redemption story. Now, I was very nervous going into reading this that he was not gonna get redemption, because if you have read this, or if you do read this, you know, okay, and you will know that he is an absolute asshole, okay? I actually loved this book, and he definitely gets redemption. Just everything about it was so good. I would highly recommend both of these. They are both so good, and I loved them, so highly recommend. Next, we're gonna get into some fantasy book recommendations, starting out with ones that have no smut. So, if you are someone who likes the show Avatar: The Last Airbender, there is 4 books in the Avatar universe that you could read. Now, I have personally not read these, but my husband has, and he absolutely loved them, said they were so good. The first 2 are about Kyoshi, the Rise of Kyoshi and the Shadow of Kyoshi. He read both of these pretty quickly and absolutely just ate them up, devoured them, said they were so good. And then the other 2 is The Dawn of Yang Chen and The Legacy of Yang Chen. Now, obviously, these are about 2 different of the avatars in the Avatar universe before Aang. Yeah, my husband said they were really good, so I would highly recommend, if you like that show, to give these a read. I feel like they could really get you into reading if you already like the universe. And then you had to have seen this coming. If you didn't, I mean, come on now. We have the whole Harry Potter series. Now, I have personally not finished all the Harry Potter books. I've actually only read the first one, but I love the universe, and if you are someone who loves the movies and already loves the universe, reading the books, whether you read them in school or when you were younger or not, could really get you back into reading. Again, this is what did it for me. Reading this first Harry Potter book is literally what did it for me. It's what made me go from hating reading, not picking up a book, and actually reading a book since 8th grade to literally loving reading, and I have now read almost 100 books since I started reading a little over a year ago. So highly recommend. Next up, we have Heavy is the Crown by Lindsay J. Now, this is my personal favorite fantasy book. This is the book that actually got me into reading fantasy, and it is so good. It's such a fast-paced read. We're following 2 modern teens who fall into this medieval realm. They don't know how. They get separated on 2 opposite sides of a centuries-long war, and they have to find each other to figure out how to get back home. Now, let me tell you, this is the first in a series, and this leaves off on a huge cliffhanger, but it is so good, especially for a beginner reader, for a beginner with fantasy. I would highly recommend. The second one comes out sometime this year, and I am so excited, so highly recommend. I would actually literally tell every single person watching this video and every person who ever watches any of my videos to please read this book. Thank you. Next, another YA fantasy that is a very heavily romantasy, so it has a very heavy plot of romance, is Divine Rivals. I currently do not own a physical copy of this. I read it on Kindle Unlimited, but it is so good. Again, there's a very heavy plot of romance, and the romance in this book is so good, but the fantasy aspect is also just so fun, and just the plot of this book was so good. I think this would be great for a beginner reader, for a beginner reading fantasy. It is just so good. Highly recommend. Yeah. And then the next 2 books is a duology, and that is the Grimrose Girls duology by Laura Pohl. The first one is The Grimrose Girls, and then the second one is The Wicked Remain. These are kind of a young adult fiction, fantasy, dark academia duology, and it was so good. I really enjoyed both of these books. If you're someone who kind of likes the dark academia vibe, also this is giving very much fairy tale aspects to it, so if you're also someone who likes Disney movies and you like fairy tales, literally throw that all together, and that's what you get with these books. It's so fun. I really enjoyed the ride I went on in these books, so highly recommend. And then moving on into some fantasies that do have smut. Now, they don't have that much smut, so don't think you're gonna go into this reading a lot, but it does have some, and that is the Lachlan Feud series by Robin D. Mall and Elle Madison. I absolutely loved this series so much. There's 4 books: Scarlet Princess, Tarnished Crown, Crimson Kingdom, and Obsidian Throne, and they were all so good. It has a very heavy subplot of romance. We have a bit of like a love triangle, kind of enemies to lovers. I really enjoyed the fantasy aspect to this, though I will say I think this is great for beginners reading fantasy or just beginners reading in general, because the fantasy aspect in these books is so simple, easy to understand, but it's enough that it kind of puts you into like a different different world and a different kind of reality. The subplot of romance helps kind of keep the book moving along and give you something else to kind of hang on to really be invested in the story, and I thoroughly enjoyed the whole series. I think it's so good and I would highly recommend. Another series that I do absolutely love is the ACOTAR series by Sarah J Maas. Now, a lot of people are going to recommend this as a beginner fantasy series, but here's why I don't know if I would recommend these as a beginner, depending on what kind of person you are. So let me explain. This first book, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses, is very slow at the beginning. Now, some people can read this and not care how slow it is and absolutely love it. I've seen so many people say this is the first ever fantasy book they read and it completely made them love fantasy. But for me personally, I tried to read this as my first fantasy book and it did not work out for me. I ended up DNFing this book 2 times before the 3rd time actually reading the whole book. Now, let me just say, once you get past like 50%, it picks up, it gets so good, and I have currently only read the first 3, but they are so good. But again, this is going to be very much based on who you are as a person, what kind of attention span you have, what you personally stay interested in. Again, going back to my tips earlier, are you interested in something like this? Are you interested in a lot of world building? Are you someone who can kind of go along for the ride before a lot of plot starts happening, before some romance starts happening? Know who you are and what you can handle before going into this from the jump. But I will say this series is absolutely incredible. So much happens. It's literally an amazing series and I would recommend. If you are a beginner, keep in mind who you are, what you can handle, and maybe don't read this first if you know you don't think you should. Next, we're gonna get into some mystery thriller recommendations. Now, I would like to say I don't have very many of these because I'm not a huge mystery thriller person, but I do have some that I absolutely have loved that I definitely think would be great for a beginner starting out because they are just so good and will really keep your attention. So starting out with just a straight mystery series, there's not really anything thrilling about this, and that is the Inheritance Game trilogy. I've currently only read the first 2, but it is a trilogy. The first one is the Inheritance Games, and we have the Hawthorne Legacy and the Final Gambit. This series basically follows this girl named Avery, who basically this old man that she's never met before leaves his entire inheritance to her. And let me tell you, this dude is literally crazy rich, okay? Billions upon billions of dollars, okay? So we go through this book, there's tons of riddles and games and secret passageways in this giant mansion. It is such a fun series and I would highly recommend. The writing style of this is just very captivating. The chapters are very short, so if you are someone like me who does not want to stop reading in the middle of a chapter, you could set a goal to read 5 chapters and that maybe only be 15 pages. It's super fast paced, super fun, absolutely love them. Highly recommend. Sticking with a YA kind of mystery, this one does have some thrilling aspects to it, and that is Murdered at 17 by Christine Conrad. I really enjoyed this book. This is one of the first mystery thrillers I ever read and I thought it was so fun. Really enjoyed the plot of this book. Basically, this book is about Brooke and she has this disorder which causes her to fly into uncontrollable and sometimes violent rages, and she ends up kind of like blacking out and not really remembering what happened during those times, and her best friend ends up murdered and she thinks she's the one that did it, and that's kind of what the plot of this book is. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it and I would highly recommend, especially to a beginner, which is the whole point of this video, of course. And again, some more YA recommendations. These are also mystery thriller, and that is books by Natasha Preston. Personally, I've read 3 books by her and The Lake has been my absolute favorite. This is the first book I read by her and I absolutely loved this book. The ending of this book is absolutely crazy and I literally loved the ending of this book. I've also read You Will Be Mine by her. This wasn't my favorite, but I still really enjoyed the story. It really just kept me reading the whole time and I thought it was fun. And the other book I've read by her is The Haunting, which is her newest release. That one would be great to read around Halloween because that takes place the week before Halloween and it kind of follows this copycat killer type vibe. I really love her writing. I think if you're someone who gets scared very easily but you want to read a mystery thriller, these are great because they're not scary enough to like not let you sleep at night, but they give you enough of a thrill to just be really fun, and I would highly recommend. And then for some adult mystery thriller recommendations, the first 2 I have are both by Geneva Rose. The first one is The Perfect Marriage and the second one is One of Us is Dead. One of Us is Dead is not really thrilling. It's more of just a mystery, kind of trying to figure out what happened, more very just like character driven, and it's just kind of you trying to figure out which one of these people died. And then The Perfect Marriage was so good. This is definitely my favorite of the 2. I loved this book. This book basically follows this husband and wife. They've been married 10 years. The husband ends up getting charged with the murder of his mistress and his wife is a lawyer and ends up defending him. The end of this book had me absolutely floored. I thought it was such an amazing book. I loved the whole thing. It was very captivating. It kept me so interested throughout the entire book, and again, the ending was insane and I absolutely loved it. So highly recommend. I really enjoyed both of these and I think they would be great starters. And the last mystery thriller recommendation I have is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Now, I do not have a physical copy of this, and this is also the first in a series I think there's 3 in the series. I've personally only read the first one, but I really enjoyed it. It's so fast-paced, super captivating. I literally read this book literally less than 24 hours. It was so good. My sister has also read this and absolutely loved it, so would highly recommend. The last genre we're gonna talk about is sci-fi. Now, I have actually never read a sci-fi book myself, and I only have one recommendation for you, but I just wanted to point out that if you love Star Wars, read some Star Wars books. Now, again, I have never read a Star Wars book, but my sister has, and she loves every single one that she has read. And if you are someone who loves the Star Wars movies, what better way to get into reading than reading some Star Wars books? That could be the thing to get you into reading. So I would highly recommend doing that if you love Star Wars. Again, my sister has read a ton of them and absolutely loves them, so highly recommend. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this helped. I hope this helps you get into reading and find that love of reading deep down inside of you that I know is there. Let me know down below if this helped, if you read any of the books on this list of recommendations, if you have, what you thought. Let me know any questions you have down below. Literally just let me know down below how you're feeling, what you think, whatever. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are not already, because we have a lot of fun over here and we want you to join the fun. And also, maybe my reading vlogs will help you want to read a little bit more. And with that being said, I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. That took a really long time to film. Okay, and I'm gonna show you how you hours reading. You probably just would have what makes some people's I'm having so much fun filming this video right now, guys. Okay. Yeah, depending on what genre you're looking. Wow. Let's start that over. I feel like I don't like what I said. Keeping with the young adult. No. Can you go over there, please? Thank you. Oh, don't touch that. Follows this girl named Max. Max's younger brother? Older brother? So it's kind of main character. Hi. In 2021, unbelievably selfish. What? All this is so sweet. Like, oh no, don't do that. Like, what? What did I just say? What the hell did I just say? I don't know. What did I just say? Can these dogs not bark? Now, do these dogs not know I'm trying to film? Hello? Okay. Go watch Blippi. Go watch Blippi. Holy shit. Dawn of Yang Chen. Which one was the first one? And next, you had to have seen this coming. Highly recommend the Avatar. Whoa. Well, need a lot going on. It kept me looking through the smoke in the mirror. Crazy how I see you so clear. Crazy how I see you so clear. And how you make me smile.